Welcome everybody to the Bucky Call. It's Saturday, May 2nd. And it is, it's a great day here in Philadelphia. It's always sunny in Philadelphia. So, Steve, how you feeling? What would you like to take away from today?
Really good. Well, it's Saturday, May 2nd, and Sunday, May 3rd, some places in the world. Anne won't be here tonight. Her husband has a birthday party going on, and I haven't
Okay.
heard from Fred. Yeah, I haven't heard from Fred. So, but I'm here, and I had a family event, so I've turned it over to you, Joe, and then I'm going to say my little intro, and then I'm going to go dark, but I'm going to listen in on my way home, and I'll join you when I get to my computer. Um, I really wish I had Richard's toy. It just frustrates me. Richard, I hope you'll connect with the groups you're with and get somebody to produce that toy again. They'd sell at least two or three. I'd buy three of them. Okay, so but that would be really cool. There's more. I'm sure I'll pick it up for the end of the program today, but I'm going to listen in as we drive. And get deeper insight as to the structure of the universe. You know, more and more these days, with the advent of quantum computing, it seems like science is leaning more and more towards consciousness as being something underlying and foundational to the development, the emergence of quantum mechanics and physical reality. I even listened today to and of course, one of the proponents of this consciousness underneath quantum mechanics is Donald Hoffman, who talks about an amplituhedron as a geometric structure upon which our granular universe is based. And I listened today to somebody talking about, oh, geez, I wish I could remember it exactly, but it's something like the God proposition or the God possibility that people are going back to David Bohm. They're going back to people who talked about consciousness as underlying in the universe and stopped trying to be, to go with that consciousness emerged from materialism, from matter. So I think we're in a great place. And I think in another 10 or 20 years, things are going to be a lot more, we're going to be able to integrate what Bucky was talking about more and more, because Bucky had one paradigm on this thing that underlies human experience and human consciousness. So I'm real excited as we proceed with this, hoping I understand more and more of it. So thank you. And then I'm going to Lee. How are you feeling? What shape am I in? I really like that toy. I can actually see I have Tensegrity bands that are holding my parts together, and I'm seeing those bands, and I'm quite flexible in between, and I'm amazed that I can walk. So that's my shape. Lee, how are you? What shape are you in? How are you feeling? And what do you anticipate from today's call? And I'm going to sign off and listen to you guys as you talk. Thank you.
I'm feeling wonderful. And yes, I feel now that I have begun to do a lot of yoga. I am going to on Wednesday nights. I or not on yeah on Wednesday nights we go to the gymnasium, and I can't remember what it is, but anyway, it's a pretty nice one. I have done rowing, and I have lifted 5 pounds, laying down on a bed type thing, and lifting weights. And I wasn't sure about going to the left and then downwards from up to down. That was difficult, and I wanted to cry. But I'm beginning to get the elasticity of your beautiful sample toy, Richard. I do associate myself to that toy, and I would love to have one also. Richard, how are you feeling? And what is your takeaway? And how are you? What are you wanting to get out of today?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good, and in the context of shape, I guess I'm feeling in uh, kind of a robust, stretchy shape. Lots of give and take, and the the toy, as I have lost track of. I don't think there's anybody sort of making it right now, but I have a number of uh, patterns uh, with the purchases that I made years ago, and it lays out exactly uh, how you put the struts together with the elastics and how they are connected at the corners and eventually can form the tetrahedron. Or um, if you if you had a full kit, you'd be able to make a complete icosahedron. Um, but I've always found the tetrahedron was sufficient to sort of capture that compression, tension, um, uh, stability that holds the system together, but not in a rigid way. It's in a what some people are now calling either a robust equilibrium or a dynamical equilibrium, or something that has flow and energy going through it. The kind of um, talk that Manu often contributes around the energy between nodes and points. And I'm looking forward to sort of the final part of this book and into the last chapter on design science. It's certainly giving me more of a deeper understanding than when I first uh, was introduced to, not necessarily the book. I was introduced to Amy Edmondson herself at a workshop in San Diego. And then I found her book, and then I tried to introduce the book to students. That didn't go over as well as the book went over with me. But anyway, so that's kind of how I'm feeling and kind of what I want to get out of the last part of the book. And Joe, how are you feeling, and what's your anticipation for this evening's reading? You're on mute. Mute.
Yep. Sorry about that. I'm, I'm feeling pretty good actually. Had a little bit of interesting day. I had an interesting conversation with Wayne. It was a lot of fun. And we had some really good discussions about, just how to look at the connections between things. And one of the things that had come up was essentially how Bucky actually is making a lot of the connections that on a physical and metaphysical level, and how, you know, Wayne does that in his projects. He's able to put together moving parts specifically, sometimes, just people with specific skill sets or but they're on a mission that's actually focused on a greater whole that is making you know the making or building communities that work for each other. And so that was a really interesting conversation. Um, I have this call to thank for that, the series. Um, and so, yeah, I was very appreciative of that. Made me think a little bit of Kelly, and who I haven't seen for a couple of years. And I was just wondering how he's doing. So grateful to be here for these relationships. And just I think the point that Steve made is interestingly enough about consciousness, I think is really something uh that as we gain a greater understanding about how we work on a biological level, but also on their social level, I think we'll be able to have an idea what makes us us. And one of the ideas that I really, kind of had I feel like, there's been quite a bit of a breakthrough with is, using the philosopher's stone, which has been around for quite a while, but as a way of kind of capturing what it means to be conscious, but also what it means to look at the world from different viewpoints. And, that really is, where's the starting point for you within this philosopher's stone? And I think that, understanding that we understand people's differing perspectives, do they start outside of the universe, inside of the universe? Do they start with their, spirit, if you will, or is it, do they start with the physical form? Whatever they think, wherever their starting point is, really helps us understand how, people think. So, and the reason I think that is that really you're going to be able to focus on the geometry of thought and what it really means to get to the center of something. And I think that that's what really Bucky is going to help us reveal. And so I'm looking forward to that. And with that, we might as well, let's get started with our section here. And I will share my screen. And hang on a second. If I get the right page, which I was just on a moment ago. Tensegrity Polyhedra. Okay. So, okay. So if I don't know if anybody wants to start reading, but I don't mind, but I'm always open to anybody else that wants to read.
I can read if you want.
Be great. Awesome.
Okay, starting at Tensegrity Polyhedra. Tensegrities can be derived from all polyhedra, whether regular, semi-regular, high-frequency geodesic, or irregular, typically with one strut representing each edge of the polyhedron. Struts do not come in contact with each other, but instead are held in place by a network of tension elements or strings or elastics, producing completely stable sculptural systems. The complexity of molecular interactions aside, the two types of components are characterized by axial force states, thereby using materials most efficiently. Because components can be far lighter than would be required to withstand bending. The technical sounds of the words in no way prepares you for the exquisite appearance of these structures. The photograph 15.1 shows a tensegrity icosahedron and tetrahedron, while 15.2 displays a 3V tensegrity icosahedron as representative tensegrity polyhedra. However, there's no substitute for actual models. At last, says Bucky, we are able to experience at first hand the truth about structure. Systems cohere through tensional continuity, and nothing in the universe touches anything else. Then there's the quotes. Tensegrity structures satisfy all conceptual requirement that we may not have two events passing through the same point at the same time. Vectors, i.e. struts, converge in tensegrity, but they never actually get together. They only get in critical proximities and twist by each other. A tensegrity icosahedron, therefore, is more honest than a toothpick marshmallow structure, which seems to have 5 edges touching at each vertex. In the tensegrity, edges all come within critical proximity of the location of a vertex and twist by each other. 1511 illustrates the relationship between the tensegrity icosahedron and its Platonic counterpart. Instead of a 5-valent point with the illusion of continuity, each convergence is marked by a pentagon of string, thus illustrating the fact that the individual energy events do not touch, but instead hover in a state of dynamic equilibrium.
So,
Tensegrity.
yeah, maybe we, well, wait a minute. Well, keep going a little bit further. Yeah, I was going to stop a while ago. I realized I'm on mute, but go ahead and we'll finish this.
Yeah, I'll go to the end of the paragraph there.
Yeah.
Tensegrity structures provide a visible, tangible illustration of an invisible truth. Forces and their interactions are brought out in the open.
There we go. Yeah, so does anything come up for anybody there in the beginning there? Because I think there are some key concepts. But anybody have anything?
With this model that I have, when you look at each corner, you see that the struts can come in very close. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
So even though they look like they might be coming into touch, they're held apart by this triangular sort of elastic in the middle. And you could tighten it up, really tight, but they're still not being held together by nails or screws or anything like that. They're being held together by the tensional elements. And that's why then you can actually stretch them all apart to the point where you can lay the 6 struts down in what looks like a straight line. And you get the impression of a sort of a pattern of parallel struts. And that can be the most stretched out form of the tetrahedron, and it may come across as if it's a straight line as opposed to a line that's being held together by these elastic connections in between the struts. So,
yeah. I mean, I think that's really you've hit on the main takeaway though. It's obviously the connections. They're never really in contact with one another. However, that so it's like working more like a network. But what is the upshot of that? The upshot of that is that you can be very efficient with your energy. And I think that's where you start to see is if you were to put nails in and use all these other different materials to kind of to create this or make this this construction work, that would be highly inefficient and it would be rigid. It wouldn't have that flexibility with tensegrity. So that if you look at it from that perspective, it's the use of a material, but it's also the adaptability of the structure itself. Interestingly enough, one of the conversations that I had with Wayne earlier today was even how they made a temple that was built in the 1850s or around to 1850, but how they made it earthquake proof, and basically how they was able to essentially be able to shift, and they were to rebuild the foundation where it could absorb shock, and it could be essentially like anything else in San Francisco that's built by code these days. that it's able to kind of shift with the earth. And it's not necessarily rigid. If the structure were rigid, it would collapse in on itself, and there would be all kinds of issues with that. But that adaptability is like one of those important ideas. Is that that's tensegrity is essentially using essentially geometry, the connections between objects as a way of adapting to the environment itself. So anyway, I think that rigid structures obviously are limited, and they're also, susceptible to conditions. Whereas, ones that are flexible are adaptable, but they're also energy efficient. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, one of the best examples for me in terms of understanding the difference between keeping something flexible and mobile is if you want in the knee joint or an elbow joint,
Right.
and if you break it or the ligaments are torn to the point that they can't be replaced, you get a pin in the bone system, and of course it locks it in place, and the mobility that was once there is gone. And to me, that's a great example of when you have to sort of pin the bones together in some way, you take away all the tensional flexibility that was designed in those joints in the first place.
Yeah, and we've talked about that, a little bit, a couple weeks ago, how to even look at it from orthopedic perspective,
Mhm.
How to look at things. But Lee, please, sorry about that. We spoke over you
I
there for a minute.
I have a bionic leg.
Oh,
My femur is titanium, and the problem being was that they couldn't screw the titanium to keep all my bones together. They had to have the bones heal with the plates around my bone. They were fractured to oblivion, and I am having difficulty moving my leg. It has grown a half-inch shorter since my surgery, which is a rotten thing. But I believe with going to the gym and also doing yoga with Steve here in his apartment has really helped my leg, though the pain is still there. But I wanted to also say that we have a temple just down the road from me that had huge tubes. They were tubes as big as the height of the ceiling. If you can see how high the ceiling is compared to me, it's pretty high up.
yeah, I could tell.
And they had tubes that had elastics or springs in them so that it would move. It would create movement during an earthquake, with these
Interesting.
stones that date back to the early 1800s. Can you believe it? These stones weigh 15 tons. That's
Wow.
ridiculous how they lifted those uh, blocks of rock up to put springs underneath them. It was amazing. The whole building was lifted. And if you've ever seen pictures of the Salt Lake Temple, it's a massive structure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm finished. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate that. No, I think that it's It's great. I mean, kind of thinking about this in terms of this is how some of the ideas that we're talking about, they actually go from the theoretical to the practical.
Mm.
And so that, that's where having that conversation with Wayne today, really brought that home. With that, we'll keep going. Hang on one second.
I could try to read.
Sure, if you want, I can.
There's a few words that I may get stumped on.
Hey, welcome to my world. So,
Yeah, really.
Here we go.
All right. I'm assuming it is perhaps the most significant lesson. Is that correct?
That is
Yes.
correct.
Okay. From tensegrity structures lies in their unexpected strength. Excellent idea. A tensegrity apparent extreme fragility is completely deceptive. And that's true because since Richard was able to practically collapse his toy, that's interesting. The uniformed observer will usually approach such a structure with great caution, touch it hesitantly and gently so as not to break the delicate model, and if persistent, ultimately realize that the tensegrity can be thrown around the room without harm. That is just phenomenal. The erroneous initial assumption is a result of a deeply ingrained bias in favor of a compression as a reliable source of structure. We perceive string and cable as flimsy, but actually the magnitude of a force that can be carried by delicate tension materials can far exceed the corresponding capacity of compression elements, period. Humanity perception is in need of retuning. The other aspect of tensegrity, remarkable strength, is the rigid omnidirectional distribution of applied force. Sorry about that. One of the advances of a network of tension elements is efficient dispersal of loads around a structure, such as the temple. Enable the whole system to withstand force far greater than could be predicted by engineering analysis of the separate components. Welcome back, synergy. Welcome back, synergy. And then in small letters, I'm going to have a hard time. This is not the behavior we are used to in any structure of previous experiences. Ordinary beams deflect locally. The integrity beams does not act independently, but acts only in concept with the whole building, which contracts only contacts only symmetrically when the beam is loaded. The tensegrity system is Tensegrity. What does that mean? Anyone? That whole paragraph.
The last part
Again,
is it is synergetic,
some, right.
and that's the idea of two or more things coming together to do something that neither one can do on its own.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
and actually maybe that's a good place to stop, because I think that that's really one of the more important parts of what we just read, and obviously of Bucky in general, is that, the idea that I like the enabling Manu. So we have the enabling the whole system to withstand forces far greater than could be predicted by engineering analysis of the separate components. Meaning that if you were to look only at the part, and if you were to only look at things through isolation, that your ability to predict is diminished. You're unable to see the whole. And that, how often do you see that within organizations, where you're more focused on the part as opposed to how the parts are connected to one another? And how difficult does that impact things to be able to be predicted when you're only looking at things from your own personal lens as opposed to looking at things on the ground? And what I mean by that is, let's just say numbers are coming in, and this is something we deal with in the Navy, is that numbers come in. There are two different groups of people that are doing predictions usually, as to budgets, costs, and things along those lines. But even that of maintenance, but let's just say you're just looking at the costs, meaning the actual monetary values, not necessarily the costs, from a realistic perspective. Well, you don't have the context. You're only looking at the part, right? You're only looking at your one narrow. So the ability to predict is diminished. And so what I think here is the really important part is that it's not only the synergy that's realized by, by looking at things from a tensegrity perspective, but also the fact that, kind of that, or a whole system perspective for that matter. But it's also being able to look at things in a way that allows you to, analyze things that are, closer aligned to reality, to be quite honest. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Manu, welcome. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's your expectation for today's call? Welcome. It's good to see you.
Sorry, I overslept.
That's okay. It's 5 a.m. So
I'm just up now. I just ran to my computer. So I know. So I'm happy to be here. And then I just want to kind of get in tune of a meeting and be able to contribute if I can. So that's the way I feel. That's my expectation. Okay. Let me give it back to you.
cool. Thanks. So if there aren't any other comments, then we'll go ahead and continue to share and continue to work our way towards the end of the book, which seems impossible, really.
I need to get
Okay.
water, so someone read while I'm
I got you.
gone.
Yeah, no problem. The whole system behavior can be detected by pushing or pulling on two opposite struts of certain tensegrities. The entire system will contract or expand symmetrically like a balloon, and also will bring back to its equilibrium configuration when the applied force is removed. photo 15-4 shows the simple six-strut tensegrity, which is arguably the most elegant illustration of this uniform contraction or expansion in response to a unidirectional force. Similarly, this synergetic behavior ensures a balanced distribution of stresses. If taunted, one point in tensegrity in a tensegrity system, all of the other parts of it tighten evenly. If you twang any tension member anywhere in the structure, it will give the same resonant note as the others. Fuller felt that this dispersal is not really understood by most engineers, and as a result, they have been unable to predict or analyze the extraordinary capabilities of tensegrities and geodesic domes. Note, the discontinuous compression and continuous tension also characterize geodesic domes, but as these structures lack the visually legible quality of the geometric models, one cannot at a glance identify the operative forces. Structural analysis and engineering design strategies were predicted upon the stresses analysis of individual beams, columns, and cantilevers as separate components, and could in no way predict, let alone rely upon, the synergetic behaviors of geodesics. Engineering was therefore, and as yet is, utterly unable to analyze effectively and correctly tensegrity geodesic structural spheres in which none of the compression members ever touch one another, and only the tension is continuous. Quite remarkable. Okay, we'll just the ultimate result of this conceptualizing and model building is that the barrier to ever larger, clear spanning enclosures has been removed. By understanding the crucial role of tension, we can learn to manipulate it in preferred ways. We are able to reach unlimited spans because our only limitation in tension, where there is no inherent limit to cross section due to length. Cosmic zoning laws are repealed. Any comments or questions in that area, or anything that? All right, we'll go right to pneumatics. So we recall Fuller's great circle description, in which a vast number of gas molecules are bouncing around inside a sphere, which their great circle chords ultimately describe the icosahedral pattern as a result of spatial constraints. Tensegrity now completes the image. Fuller explains that tensegrity provides a tangible demonstration of what happens inside a balloon. We tend to think of the balloon as skin, as a continuous surface. However, a more accurate picture is that of a network of molecules is in close proximity, such that the spaces between them are smaller than air molecules, allowing the network to act as an effective cage. The balloon is indeed not only full of holes, but it is in fact utterly discontinuous. It is a net and not a bag. In fact, it is a spherical galaxy of critically neighboring energy events. It's very important. Gas molecules push out against the tensed rubber net, and a dynamic equilibrium is maintained. Compression and tension are in balance. Anybody have any thoughts or comments about that, or any takeaways from that from that particular section, because I think that's
I do.
oh, go ahead, please.
Just give me a second. This is what he's talking about the icosahedron here. Is a net that is critically expanded and which connection is only summarized to vertex to vertex. That is a gaseous state. I've shared this with you many, many times. You see that?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah. This is the icosahedron. These are the 20 faces of the icosahedron. You can see them, all of them connected there, vertex to vertex, and forming critically the pentagons. So you have at each vertex has four, how would I call it here? No, it's just vertex to vertex. That is the first thing that I wanted to see, which is what I just heard you reading here the last. And the second intervention that I wanted to do is a rapprochement with cosmometry summary. I don't know if anybody has had a chance to read that cosmometry, the assignment that we had for Wednesday.
Yeah, well, were our takeaways from the book.
Yes. So it is what is said previously when we were talking about engineering is actually very, very well described in that addendum to cosmometry. You call it what was the title of it? That summary? The addendum of cosmometry. I read it, is really quite exciting. So those two actually give a very, very complete picture of what is being read here.
Yeah,
I'm true.
one of the things that I was thinking about, Manu, and maybe what just happened to I don't know why that happened. I just drew on it. The idea of how essentially, within tensegrity, there's actually this push and pull, which is there's radiating something and gravitating, and how they work together essentially to use energy efficiently. So, that basically, that this leads to that dynamic relationship, right, between, where things, they're pushing and pulling, but they're working together symmetrically. And so when you have that, that's really where you're getting to the heart of what tensegrity is all about. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
and I think that actually is really kind of called out here pretty well. And so when we're talking about the gas molecules in particular.
Yeah.
The limit of the paper models are that they can't really show the tensional connections between the vertices.
But one thing that was very, very interesting in that addendum is page 362 of cosmometry. This figure here. You remember this one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sure do. Yeah.
Okay. And that figure there, on it thought about three aspects of the same thing. It talk about the metaphysical information. It talk about the mind that is always relational. And it talk about the duality of information and energy mass always going together. But this figure is, and then the one very important point that it says there is that of boundary. Is once you set the boundary through your dampener, whether you play music, I mean, if Steve was, I guess Steve is not here. If Steve was playing music and then setting the boundary through his stuff and is striking, is creating stationary waves that resonate with whatever melody that you want us to transmit. And that's the whole important things. The tensegrity model, according to, one of his practical things that I've learned is to learn how to set boundaries, when to strike, and then be receptive to the feedback in such a way that when there is dissonance due to whatever you objected, when I say objected here, that is your objective that you plan to do, then you can do the tacking. You can modify in a way that you restore that equilibrium, that dynamic equilibrium. And that is the art of living. And that is the art of living in a creative way. But in a way that is harmonic with the constraint that nature or that the cosmos present around us. Okay, I'm through.
Thank you for that, Manu. Any thoughts or any follow on to that? No?
Well, I think, as you say, I think one of the things that's coming through is the importance of what I think is the load distribution or the tensional distribution between compression elements. And so it's like if a person is considered a compression element, and the weight of the world is coming down on them, and they feel the heavy pressure. If you can spin some of that off in a tensional way to somebody else, or sometimes to a system that the society sets up that will take some of the load off, then you start to get this tensional dynamic working. And the same way, if you've got an institution that is feeling the pressure of whatever it's demanding, it can offload some of its tension sometimes to individuals to help share the load. And so you get this reciprocal back and forthness between vertices or nodes, and yet the aliveness or the robustness or the dynamic between them has to do with the stretch, the tension. And you can stretch something out too far and it'll break, or you can pull it in too close and it's in your face, and that's also very uncomfortable. So how do you get the right tensional space between two nodes? And for the most part, for me anyway, in a social context, the importance of relationship is often just so much rhetoric. People don't really understand what the relationship tensionality is all about and why it's so important in holding compression elements together. Compression elements, in my mind, being two or more people. Yeah. So I'm complete.
Thank you for that. Yeah, very much appreciate that. And I also do like to always talk about it from an organizational dynamic. perspective. So, with that, let me go back to sharing my screen. Would somebody mind reading for a minute, just a minute, and I can pick it back up in a moment. I just need to do something really quickly. I'll get off camera for one moment. We started about our eyes cannot see the bustling molecular activity of the balloon, and Fuller sees synergetics as a way to help us tune into the invisible behavior. A high frequency tensegrity icosahedron does just that. In the geodesic tensegrity sphere, each of the entirely independent compressional chord struts represents two oppositely directioned and force-paired molecules. The tensegrity compressional chords do not touch one another. They operate independently, trying to escape outwardly from the sphere, but are held in a spherical tensorial integrity closed network system of great circle connectors. He elaborates on the parallel holding of icosahedral tensegrity that has traveled with him hundreds of lectures. This is a balloon, except in tension components are only placed right where they're needed. It is a balloon with all the excess tension taken out. Strings are located only where the strut molecule wants to impinge on the sphere's surface. I don't know if anybody can read that. Well, I can read this really quickly, this next section, but I have to help someone.
I can read. I can read.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll be right back. So
Okay.
we are thus. Yep.
Yeah. We are thus led back to the necessity of three-way great circling. A gas-filled balloon is not stratified. If it were, it would collapse like a Japanese lantern. Once we have three or more push-pull paths or pair kinetic molecules, they must inherently triangulate by push-pull into stabilization of opposite angles. Triangulation means self-stabilizing, which creates omnidirectional symmetry, which makes an inherent three-way spherical symmetry grid, which is the geodesic structure. Wow. The analogy is complete. Pneumatics are dynamic, high-frequency tensegrity geodesic configurations. The principle of tensegrity, perhaps more than any other single aspect of synergetics, has yet to be exploited to its real potential in terms of design advantage. But the elegant simplicity of these remarkable structures hints at the nature of a future design revolution towards innovative design with unprecedented performance per pound. Finally, the tensegrity system, besides suggesting structural applications, has also provided a useful model in science. Any comment?
Well, my comment from the social perspective is that in a social tensegrity sort of model, the reference here that says has yet to be exploited to its real potential in terms of design advantage, to me that's so important and so relevant in the construction of social relationships, or in the construction of conceptual models or designs that would give guidance to those who are trying to be in a helpful relational experience with somebody that's often called a client or a patient and that sort of thing. So I would love to read over and over again to people working in the human services, um, the line that says has yet to be exploited in its real potential, and to keep repeating that to let people know that there's a lot more that can be done in this social tensegrity concept than has ever been explored before.
Mhm. It seems to me that talking about the social application of it is that if you let loose, nature will go to jettison to the maximum. That means people are not going to be in a relationship. So if you really want to apply it that way, you should be able to first set up your social gathering in terms of, for example, the geodesic dome. I mean, when you are starting, try to make setting and centers of influence in a way that you have a combination of the octagon and pentagons, together. And then since each person that is member of that network is always moving, I think the role of the moderator of a group, or even everybody should be empowered to do that, is to always check those balances. How far have I gone? And make sure that if I go far, there is a counter somewhere else in the system that absorbs the energy that is flowing from me or flowing to me, that gives the energy that is flowing to me. If I compress, there is somewhere in the system near me or a little bit farther in the system that absorbs the energy that is flowing from me. In that way, dynamically, everybody in the system would be educating himself to hold that whole dynamic in the pursuit of a purpose for which he was set.
Yeah, and I think that's what's Bohemian dialogue is all about, with the emphasis on suspended judgment, so that when you come in with your compression sort of experiences or opinions or knowledge, and you enter into dialogue with somebody else, the importance of being able to suspend your compression position to allow the network tensionality to, if you want, come alive between the two or more parties is really critical. And I think there's a lot of ways in which a mechanical metaphor, a mechanical model, can help people understand how important it is to free up the tensionality rather than trying locking it down with a compression strong kind of position.
Yes.
And
Because yeah, when you come in with a judgment, it's like tightening a screw. No? If you judge too quick.
Yeah.
So you suspend it, there's a chance. Remember, we are in the system. Whether we are a supervisor, a moderator, or whatever, we are still in the system. We are still only accepted and recognized vertex of a system.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe, you want to continue with?
I can pick it up from here. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for that for that little reprieve there. Just needed to help someone out really quickly. So case in point, Donald Ingber, sorry. One striking example was contributed to the growing list in 1983 by Donald Ingber, then a doctoral student at Yale University working on the biology of tumor formation and malignant invasion. Ingber had been exposed to tensegrity structures in a undergraduate design course, a playful option on the other end of the academic spectrum, which was to influence his vision as a scientist in profound ways. While pursuing his research in cell biology, Ingber began to observe some fundamental similarities between the subjects of his two seemingly opposite investigations, and it appeared that tensegrity theory was applicable to biological systems. But yeah, we've had pretty extensive discussions around that. That is, fuller structures exhibited certain dynamic characteristics that were analogous to cell and tissue behavior. Significant structural parallels between the behavior of cellular and tensegrity systems led Ingber to powerful insights about the regulation of cell shape, differentiation, and growth, and thereby suggested a strategy for further investigation. This very general summary is based on Dr. Donald Ingber's paper, Cells as Tensegrity Structures, Architectural Regulation, and Histodifferentiation by physical forces transduced over basement membrane, published as a chapter in Gene Expression During Normal and Malignant Differentiation. LC Anderson, CG Gartenberg, and P. Ekblom, eds. Orlando, Florida, Academic Press, 1985, pp. 22. Am I sharing my screen here? I am not.
No.
But I'll tell you this. I should get some kind of award for reading that last little section there. I'm sorry.
I agree with that one.
Yeah, that was something else. Ingber proceeded to build, test, and study tensegrity structures in an effort to understand the implications of his proposed model, and was excited by the results of the comparison. His revolutionary approach has led to significant breakthroughs in his research into cancer formation, which he now continues at Harvard University Medical School. Without a detailed description of Ingber's research, we could still profit by the theme of his radical theory. In a 1983 letter to Fuller, Ingber proposes a whole system approach in which the architectural form of a tissue may itself serve to coordinate and regulate the shape, orientation, and growth of its individual cells through transmission of the physical forces of tension and compression characteristic of a given three-dimensional configuration. There is no more appropriate conclusion than Ingber's own description in the letter. The beauty of life is once again that of geometry with spatial constraints as the only unifying principle. It is of interest to note that as presented in the accompanying paper, cancer may then be viewed as the opposite of life, resulting from a breakdown of this geometric hierarchy of synergetic arrangements. Design science. If there are
Can we make a comment?
Yeah, as I would say, if there's no comments, or we would go to design science. But go ahead. I'm glad somebody does.
Yeah, we discuss. I'm having my thought now between the two meetings, because these two books are converging in a way that is sometimes even scary. What I'm saying and beautiful at the same time. what I'm saying here is that this letter that is talking about is 1983, just before Fuller passed away.
Right.
And there's been a lot done, or I don't think that it was abandoned. But as a result, Grand Society-wise, the results have been confiscated. I don't want to get into the conspiracy theory here, in that it's not, again, a vision of Bucky that we were on the verge of a great revolution that will enormously allow us to jump forward in terms of our general understanding of universe and application in a way that that will pass this critical part of our evolution. Is I don't know, maybe somebody has where these great results have been applied to outside of a few.
Well, one of the things that I got connected to quite a long time ago around Ingber's work, he had there was a major article published in Scientific America in 1990, and he used all of these principles to make the case or demonstrate how cellular systems from simple cells go through a self-organizing process to create greater and greater complexity. And it's a great article, beautiful article that extends what Amy obviously was writing about in 1983. So it's another 7 years or so before he gets this piece of work published in Scientific American. And it really is all about self-organizing it from simple cells to more complex cells, and simple sort of organisms to complexity developed organisms.
Welcome, Steve.
Surely, good to be here. I've been listening the whole time.
Yep, it's great to have you here.
Good. Thank you. Thanks for proceeding. Please
Hey, no
continue.
problem. Sure.
We're here.
Yeah, does anybody else have any immediate thoughts or anything about the
Right.
biological discussions? So I mean, basically, yeah, it's a framework for everything. That's basically what we're trying to, I think that coming to the end of this section when we're talking about what tensegrity really is, it's a framework for engineering, atomic structures, and it's for biology as well. So when you look at it as a, kind of being across domains, then you kind of start to see it as a universal principle. Richard, do you have your hand up? I don't know if you're wanting to comment or not. All right.
That was before.
Okay, so I'll just take it down. So let's go with we'll go to the next section here, and we'll go ahead and continue on. Cool. So, design science. And let me see if I can't say it myself. Design science. I did not set out to design a geodesic dome. I set out to discover the principles operative in universe. For all I knew, this could have led to a pair of flying slippers. This playful declaration stands as a concise summary of the philosophy behind Fuller's life work and introduces the relationship of synergetics to design. Design science in the most general terms, maintains that faithful observation of the universe is the basis of successful invention. The idea, therefore, is not to invent some strange new gadget, hoping there will be a market for it, but rather to tap into the exquisite workings of nature. While the significance of scientific discoveries is not always immediately understood, the accumulated generalized principles have been applied in innovative ways throughout history, producing artifacts which have gradually transformed the physical environment. Therein lies the key to humanity's success aboard spaceship Earth, explains Bucky Fuller. Comprehensive anticipatory design. This is one of the things actually that CJ used to really like to talk about, or actually had written quite a bit about. And I have to find an outlet here in a moment. Characteristically, his title expands to embrace the full significance of this vital human endeavor. Fuller defines design as the deliberate ordering of components, thus distinguished from randomness. Design implies the presence of intellect. His definition is worth of our serious attention. For the word is too often associated with the concept of decoration, secondary or superficial embellishment, as opposed to thoroughly developed systems. Fuller was quick to point out that universe overflows with evidence of design. Unimaginably intricate and reliably energy patterns reveal external design interrelationship principles. Technology, to Fuller, is principle in action, and so universe is nothing but incredible technology. Its awesome complexity is inspiration for Fuller's phase intellectual integrity of eternally regenerative universe. A 258-259 weighty title attempting to convey a non-anthropomorphic respect for a greater, in fact, all-encompassing divine intelligence. Combining this newly defined word with science to describe a new discipline or field further enriches its significance. Science hints at the necessary rigor, suggesting a systematic new study. Fuller thereby expands the realm of design. The scientific method is essential for design. Science involves the application of principle. He points out that generalized principles are eternal truths as opposed to special case statements or transient facts, and as such are inherent aspects of reality waiting to be discovered. Only human beings are able to discern such truths, science, and thereby to participate in their own evolutionary design. Design is thus saturated with meaning. Humanity alone has access to the design laws of the universe, and that has determined our unique evolutionary function. Just as bees are meant to cross-pollinate, we are meant to solve problems without specialized long breaks or wings or other role-specific physical traits. Human beings have learned to exploit a mechanical advantage, discipline the electron, travel more quickly than the fastest leopard, and fly further than the strongest bird. Our unique advantage is a faculty of mind which can integrate disparate facts of experience. We are therefore deliberately designed to be comprehensivists, while all other creatures are specialists. This brings us to the next aspect of Fuller's wordy title. A lot to unpack there. I have to find an outlet to charge my computer, but any comments?
Okay, my comment to this is that, in this, you cannot just speculate on things. If you really want to change something, you have to design something that demonstrates that change that you want to exhibit. It's better to say there is a cuckoo in a bush by actually plucking the cuckoo and showing it, rather than anticipating all kind of things that may, and then when we weave them together, may look like, but actually lead you astray in terms of what you wanted to demonstrate, or worse, waste your energy, your critical, limited resources to a point where you completely lost. So that's why he insists so much on artifacts, that is putting things together according to principles that we understood in a way that it behave in an anticipatory, it behave as anticipated because it is an application of general principles at a local level.
One of the things that struck me in this reading, if universes is an incredible technology, and that and we have this intellectual integrity of eternally regenerative universe and the function that we have as human beings, I think is an important sort of discussion to have in the context of AI, and to treat AI as another extension, another lever that we have. And it seems in many ways that that's all humans have, is a sort of the equivalent to the mechanical lever. And that what AI is all about is a further sophistication of that technology that will augment or assist the human sort of population in fulfilling its purpose, and that's to problem solve and maintain, if you want, the eternally generative universe. And in that context, the evolution of AI should be done in the context of design science and not in the context of what is often referred to as pure science, or matter sort of based science alone.
Yeah. Well, the way I'm sorry, are you complete?
Yeah, I'm complete. It just struck me that all of a sudden there's another aspect to discussing, if you want, the pros and cons of AI and what's it really doing as an extension of human intelligence and humans' sort of ability to craft an even more sophisticated tool to assist in carrying out or fulfilling its purpose or function on Earth or in universe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the interesting thing about AI is that what you were just saying a moment ago is that it's not necessarily just done in the terms of science, meaning that if it's not done in terms of just science and it's done in more of a holistic way, it's considering the ethics and actually what it's supposed to be doing. So it's not supposed to be a optimization tool only. And then, and that's what the real risk is. And I've said this many times. What AI is it's an optimization function, right? It doesn't necessarily live with the consequences of its decisions because it doesn't have judgment. And this is something that Fuller is really kind of getting to, the idea of anticipatory design. Anticipatory design is that we're able to anticipate what our actions, the outcomes of our actions. But the thing is that he's saying that in terms of we're going to live with the outcomes. We have a responsibility. There's no responsibility with AI. There's no,
Yes,
and
yes,
there's,
there is. It's the
it
human
doesn't,
responsibility.
well, no, well, that's just it, though. It does not have responsibility in it of itself. So
No,
if it just optimizes something, then that's not necessarily something that it can change values on us. So the responsibility is actually how it's deployed.
I would
It's
say that
not
it responds, it has the ability to respond, but it doesn't have the ability to be accountable for its responses. But, it's a matter of
exactly
preference.
that. It's
no,
not,
that's in the humans that are doing
well,
the
but
development and design.
well, that's just it, though. I mean, so the thing is that what's unique to human beings is that we are responsible, and we're um we're having to deal with the outcomes. Whereas again, AI doesn't deal with an outcome. And this is judgment.
No,
This is human judgment, and this is where essentially ethics. So it will be intelligent. It'll be able to shape objects in the world. Along the lines of what Richard was just saying, it's like it will have a scientific approach to being able to take information in and even shape matter and cause killingry or livingry. It will do that, but the question of how it does it and whether or not it's deployed properly is, I mean, that is our responsibility. Again, if it blows up the world, it doesn't live with the consequences we do.
yeah,
Uh,
and it's a tool, therefore it's been something that is created by humans in the first place. And that's why I think it's interesting to discuss it in the context of design science, which by definition is value driven and not value free, as the pure science claims itself to be.
well, there's
Uh,
nothing that's value free. There's a value along with ethics and responsibility of those,
no, but all I'm saying is that
because
the
there's an objective function.
no, but what I'm trying to say is that by definition, science often claims to be value free. Um, Design
Well,
science, just a
yeah.
minute, design science distinguishes the kind of science by saying it's value driven. And you read Madar Gabel in his book called Hoping back in the 70s, I think it was. And it helped me understand the difference between sort of material science, let's say, and design science, and material
So
science often claiming to be pure and value free and
I
objective.
think I think it's seen as, I think we're using the words differently here. I think that, the word value, um, and the word objective and the word bias are being conflated. That one is being, if you're saying something is objective, you're saying it's not biased, right? So, but to say that science doesn't have a value, of course it has a value. Now, we may
Well,
not
yeah, it
necessarily,
does, but those who the
that's what I'm saying.
proponents are cheating by saying that it doesn't.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying is that, though, if you're saying it's value free, I'm saying it's not value free. Uh, I'm saying that it has a
I'm not
value.
saying it's value free. I'm saying the proponents of that form of science says it's value free.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
and
and
that's
I
and
think,
that's BS. It's not, but
yeah, and I think what you're saying is that, though, are you saying bias or are you saying value? Because those are two
they're both
distinct,
they're the two sides
they're
of the same
distinct.
coin.
See, that's where I'm not defining it the same. I think that there is a value in something that can have a bias. I mean, I think that there are, in fact, that's a fact, is that you can have a bias and you're going to have a value.
That's right.
So, and you can, just because, so I mean, I think word objective is that people will claim that science is objective. And that's maybe something that is that's more along the lines of what we're talking about here, but not value, I don't think. In any case, Manu, you have your hand up.
Okay. Let me put my hand down first. What I understood and what experience shows is that every new technology that has been introduced in application of tensegrity has led us, as you've been astray, rather than be teleological. Let me explain what I mean by taking some few examples. If you take blockchain, for example, if you take AI, the consequence of it has been a self-organization of groups to confiscate the power of its application and try to apply it to others to direct the flows of energy towards their so-called closed circles and getting fatter. When I mean fatter, is bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until they explode. We have abandoned the very fundamental principle that said we are comprehensivists, whether others are specialized. But there is even to that natural creation, there is a dual to it. That is the notion of anti-entropic.
Yep.
Anti-entropic. And Becky insists on that. We are the responsibility, and that comes from consciousness. We have the responsibility locally to create path of flow of energy through the local domain in a way that is harmonic with nature, in a way that it doesn't create further disequilibrium. That's why you call it anti-entropic behavior. So we have to set our boundaries and the flow in and out and around those boundaries in the way that they resonate, that we kind of try to create fractals of what nature has. And that hasn't been the case. I think that's where the problem is. The problem is that of we are aware and our self-consciousness is misdirected. And I insist on the word self to attach it to locality, because there's a global consciousness that is revealing to us, but we take it and we make it prisoner. And that's why you have, for example, today, all of these titans that are emerging. It doesn't depend on ideology. It's just a behavior of I wouldn't say humans, of human. I mean, you take what was going on in Russia in the 90s. You had the how do you call them, the oil tycoons. There was a name for it. You get to China, there has been, and these are communistic countries.
Oligarchs.
In America, you have, pardon?
Oligarchy.
Oligarchs.
Yes, oligarchy. You get in the US, you have a titan. So it is just a natural thing that a few that are there before, they forget that they are managing a flow of energy. And if they fence it too tight and just let it one opening, they will become too big and fragile, and it will create locally further disturbances. People are not going to be happy. People are going to do this and that. And that is from, to me, the application of our self-consciousness into building things that are not, in the end, anti-entropic. And anti-entropic here, not in opposition. Anti-entropic is always in a dual application, a complementarity of forces that are swirling around for us to be balanced. It's like you have a torus and you have an anti-torus. And the two are, kind of vibrating together fastly, but in a way that you see my two arms, my left hand arm, they're vibrating here, but they don't do that. They're doing that. And you have to learn to do this. It is an anti-entropic behavior. If I did one slowly and the one too fast, you're going to hit it all the time. That's the point that I wanted to make. We're still in final examination and haven't gone past that.
This is a good time to break the call. Manu, how are you feeling and what's your takeaway then?
I feel good. I like your shirt. I like the brightness of it. And it's giving me some energy. Yeah. Wow. So anyway, I feel good. I think
that's an angry
that,
squid.
Yeah. I think that on everything that we've been studying, we're converging towards something. That is, there exists in nature principles that have been applied efficiently. That is, we can learn from those principles, and then we can apply them. But it comes with responsibility. And I go back to what is said in the Bible. To those who have much, I will give more. That is, you have to expand your sphere of consciousness in order to be able to handle that complexity. In other words, at the higher and the further from that center of origin, you have to be able to handle the tensegrity or to create it in such a way that it flows and come back to the origin and flow again. That's what I take away from here. And then we should make, I sent around, I don't know if everybody had it. We have a very good friend called Dr. John Jackson, and his works. He's a geologist, he's a very experienced geologist, but he's gone into painting and he does extraordinary things. They call him the rock doctor. And I was discussing the other day, and he came to me with the notion of double wrenching at the deep mantle level. You see the wrench. The wrench in geology is the rotation of a block of rock. You call that wrench. But to have double wrenching, he says that what we call subsidence and emergence actually is not like one is subsiding, a plate is subsiding under another plate. It is the result of rotations that are dynamic rotations that allow that flow, a toroidal flow of rocks. Do you see the difference in the approach that it makes in terms of our understanding of our subsurface? It's quite revolutionary. It means that this principle, and John Jackson hasn't been part of any of Bucky. I don't think that it has the Bucky influence. But this is what he's coming up with. So I invite you to, that is my takeaway, Steve, and that's what I give. Otherwise, I'm very happy to be here. Lee, you haven't talked too much. What shape are you? How do you feel? And what do you take away?
My shape is wonderful. And that's how I feel. I learned an awful lot today. And thank you for allowing me to read real slowly. It was nice to be able to read the words that I have always looked at and wondered the meaning. And now I understand a lot more from having that opportunity. My takeaway is the knowledge that it is within me and not just the universe. It is, I am part of the universe. I am part of tensegrity. I am part of life, and I'm grateful for that. Richard, what's your takeaway? And how do you feel?
Again, I started out saying I felt robust and stretchy. I guess I sort of feel the same way. I get my two big takeaways. One has to do with the reference in the readings about the potential of tensegrity is just barely sort of uh, uh, sketched, if you want, on the surface. And I think tensegrity is much better known in the physical world and in the anatomical world, and it's minimally known in the social world. And so I take away the importance of continuing to, in some sense, be a disciple of tensegrity in a social context. And the second piece is what we were just talking about, the importance of of design science and the way in which Fuller and others have articulated it, and to really take hold of this or ownership of that kind of design science is value laden, and we are guided by our values in terms of where we want to go. And of course, I think the sad thing that we all experience is that the world, in some way, over whatever number of years and time, keeps wanting to seems to keep wanting to go in that killenry direction instead of in the livenry direction. And how do we keep that value-laden belief in livenry always front and center, and to keep our hopes and our optimism up that eventually it will break through, and the design science of our role as human beings will start to surface and materialize in practical and better ways of living, which again lead us in the direction of this making the world work for 100% of humanity, and with no deficit to anybody, including nature, that is part of our life. So those two things are my takeaway as we close in on finishing this book. Where are we going to? Steve, what have you taken from our session tonight, from the different ways in which you have participated? And
What's exciting, thank you, Richard. What's exciting is I've been able to listen to a lot, and I was really excited when you read, I think it was you reading on page 284 under pneumatics. The thought blew my mind, and then a second thought occurred. But the thought that blew my mind was, I know it's true, but to become aware that the reason why a balloon is because the rubber molecules are smaller than the air molecules, so the air stays inside the balloon, and yet it is a dynamic network of fascia or net. And the
Hmm.
reason why a balloon is because air molecules are smaller or bigger than the balloon molecules. Blew me away. And in the context of reading that, pneumatics, you got to say your favorite word. Gas molecules push out against the uh, tensed rubber net, and a dynamic equilibrium is maintained. And I was celebrating when you read that. I thought that was really cool because I think words are absolutely critical. And I was a little bit frustrated on Wednesday when we had our conversation, and there seemed to be not a consensus about how critical the words are. Of course, you and I, Richard, kind of glom around sun clips and sunsight, and I really am drastically concerned about the selective amnesia that occurs when we choose words that don't have good definitions. And especially in the time of AI, we this these rhetorical issues become absolutely essential. And this is where with you, Joe, when you were talking about responsibility, I kind of jumped in, but I would like to propose something. I would like to propose that the word responsibility means the ability to respond.
Yes.
And there's a lot of connotation about it, but AI has the ability to respond. If I give it a prompt, it will respond. If my prompt is shit, I'll get a shit response. If my prompt is genius, I'll get a genius response because AI is able to respond. Now, is AI able to be accountable? Well, that depends on what accountable means. And can I account for, am I able to account for my response? Why did I respond this way? I responded because this vector hit that vector, which hit that vector, and therefore I can explain how I responded. And I think that while AI may be accountable, it's certainly not accountable in the human context. In other words, I'm pretty sure that AI could explain why it responded a certain way, but I'm afraid that the more sophisticated AI gets, the less human beings are going to understand it. AI is already writing its own languages. It's already doing a bunch of stuff that is scaring the crap out of people who are running it, um, because it seems to be otherworldish in a sense. It seems to be alien in so many ways. So, I don't know that I'm right about that, Joe, whether you want to use the word responsibility or accountability. In fact, it seems to me in the day of AI, we need to find another word.
It's
Uh,
a great word. No, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Well, go ahead. I'm going to pass it off to you in a second. You can rebut and go for it. So, I really believe that these words are really critical, and I love dynamic equilibrium
Mhm.
because equilibrium means so many things to so many people. And and you used another one too. You said dynamic equilibrium, and then you in your conversation, Richard, some other kind of equilibrium.
Oh,
I can't remember
I often use robust equilibrium.
robust equilibrium. Robust is cool, and I like dynamic a lot because it gives me thing both ways. And by the way, this whole response about pneumatics, I one of the things that I've really been confused about a little bit is how is microscopy. Microscopy. In other words, how do I see a microscopic object? And the way I see an object is I have to have a frequency that is smaller than the object I am seeing. And this is again where words are crazy because a smaller frequency is what we call a large high frequency. High frequencies are smaller, which is, I mean, our words are so caca. But if my wave is too big, then what happens is the wave just engulfs the object and we can't see it. You got to have a high frequency, smaller wave hitting that object to bounce it off. That's why we use gamma rays to see electrons, blah, 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 blah. But microscopy has been one of those things where I've understood how it works, but using the right words because small, high frequencies have small wavelengths. But I don't know. I'm going to have to look at my definition again and figure it out. Anyway, so rhetoric is an issue with me, and it seems to be my issue. So those are all my, and I'm really delighted that you guys let me listen in tonight. I'm really grateful for Joe for jumping in and doing it over. One more thing I had on page 282, figure 1511. I kept thinking in my mind because at the opening of the call, I spoke to how cool that the Tensegrity toy is. And it seems to me, I have played with the Tensegrity toy, and suddenly as I was driving home from my event, listening to you guys talk, a lot of tents are built with tubes with elastic
Yep.
cords through them. And the way you build the tent is you stretch the elastic and separate the tube from itself. And so you could actually build a tetrahedron from a tent building kit. And, all of a sudden that hit me. And I thought, if you have a pattern, I would love for you to send me a pattern. And I think I want to play with that and make my own Tensegrity toy because I'm so tired of being jealous of you.
Will
So-
do.
Okay, really good. Okay, that's my ramblings for today. I'm really honored, Joe. Thank you for taking over today and for making things happen. Joe, how are you feeling? What shape are you in? How do you feel, and what are your takeaways today?
Yeah, I think I'm in a circle. But it's an interesting thing. I mean, I like the way you put that AI has the idea that it can respond, it has the ability to respond, so that it is responsibility, but then there's this idea of accountability. And it, using these words and getting them correct is really key. But does something have responsibility or respondability? If it's just an objective function. In other words, does it have an ability at all? I don't know. I have to think about that. I mean, it has the ability to respond, so I don't know. But I think the main point is to think about it in terms of it is something that is going to accomplish whatever it's setting out to do and not necessarily thinking about how it connects to the greater whole. And this is one of the bases of the design science or anticipatory design science. And this is Bucky's point, is that, human beings do have this unique way of shaping the world. And if we do it in isolation, and not necessarily do it with the idea of the collective whole, that it ultimately is, something that is, you're not working with generalized principles, and you're obviously just, you have a way of potentially creating more harm, because something like a cheetah may not necessarily look at the world the same way we do, but it most certainly, doesn't have the destructive, can't cause the same destruction that we can create. So, again, there's there's a lot to unpack there, whether or not, that it has something that has an objective, has a value. And it's just a question if that value is in relation to everything else, or if it's just in a domain. And so I think that's it's something to think about it. Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you, Steve. It's something I got to really think about. It is something I'm going to come back to you on, because I think getting these words right is actually, because I think that getting these words right are actually one of the keys. The idea of judgment, how that factors into this whole thing too, right? So because, does it have judgment is a really important question to be able to answer.
And the nuance between judgment and prejudice, there's a nuance there.
Yes, yes. But yeah, I mean, because judgment automatically implies value too. So you know, it can you argue that it has a judgment? Yeah, but judgment and does require dealing with you're judging in relation to something. So I think thinking about how these words all work together is going to be a nice little test. Maybe we can open up the call with next week. I really do. I think it could be a good thing. Manu, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Well,
say something in regard to what you are saying.
yeah,
And
why don't you
remind us
complete,
of,
Joe? Why don't you complete, and then that ends the night, and then Manu can jump in and comment on yours.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so basically, you know, the other thing is I think of this idea that it relates back to tensegrity, and tensegrity is how the parts relate together. And when we think about it in terms of, I think it's nicely set up in terms of how do the parts relate together, how this relates to generalized principles, and how this all kind of comes together in the sense that we're thinking about anticipatory design. And you know, these are really key concepts at this particular moment in time that we really come to understand that the relationship is in between the parts, and that's where, you know, we necessarily need to be focused as opposed to be focusing on the parts themselves. And I think that if you focus on the parts themselves, they become rigid and the structure breaks. And we talked a little bit about that. So, I mean, my main takeaway is we're going to get these terms. We're going to talk about them, and we're going to make those words align properly, because I do think this is far too important, because I have a whole diagram that I could share about how we go from the knower to known to knowing, and this is something I brought up the other night, on Wednesday, the knower to the known to knowing, which is basically, you know, the subject, the object, and the verb, and how that ultimately relates to the verb relates to the action, which relates to judgment. I have a whole diagram on this. So understanding that and having that outlined and having an understanding of these words are really key, because it's, you know, even goes to the structure of grammar itself. Anyway, I'm complete. Yeah, and I can send that to you. Give me a few minutes here. And I will send that. Oh, I put it in the chat. But go ahead, Manu. I'm complete.
yeah, I just wanted to remind us of three things. The one, you remember the might.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And we say that the might can fill all space. There were two things that were said as can fill all space. There was a cube octahedron, and there was a might. And the notion of boundary as something that holds, because boundary creates inside and outside, it holds, but it holds over something. And you can see here percolating the notion of time as how long it will take energy that is seen in a pattern that holds inside to deplete in such a way it changes. That pattern changes. I don't know if you can see it as I'm seeing. You have here a boundary, which is a net that has been organized in such a way that the critical space between the vertices or between the spheres is smaller than the might. Is smaller than the unit account of that energy that is imprisoned in that space. So it holds it. But it can only, because it's dynamic, it can only hold it for so long. I want to introduce the notion of time here. So it holds it for so long. And how long is hold is actually the implied notion of time in our setting. And is also what introduced at that level when time comes in, our anti-entropic behavior. Our construct was just for a while before radiation eventually overwhelmed gravity. That's what I wanted to come to into this. The notion of anti-entropic, our action that is educated, that is informed, to act locally in a way that we maintain that dynamic equilibrium is called anti-entropicity. Excuse me the word. We're acting anti-entropically to whatever was going in order to maintain a certain order that we perceive as coherent, as harmonic with the music that is playing universally. Okay, I'm through with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
See you, everybody.
All right, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah, I dropped my thing in the chat, but
Thank you. I got it. Thank you.
all right, cool. All right, man. Take
Bye-bye.
care.